it's difficult finding hooks, especially during a live performance, finding hooks and doing group vocals that are kind of melodic on top of blast beats. It's a very interesting thing, you know, and it did feel very sort of, I think epic is probably the best word to describe it as, you know, so that was fun seeing, and also they were a band I listened to a lot back home as a teenager, you know. That's kind of what I always reflect back to, is bands that I listened to in Iran.
Greetings, friends. Welcome to episode 219 of Into the Necrosphere, a very special installment of the show where I will recap my first ever experience of attending the legendary Inferno Festival held in Oslo, Norway. I was joined by my friend, my brother, my fellow horseman of the podcasting apocalypse, Shayan of the band Trivax, host of Iblis Manifestations, and as it was his first experience as well, we had plenty to talk about. Over the course of about an hour and 20 minutes, you will hear us share our views of how the festival was run. You'll hear us share some of our personal highlights, our favorite performances of the weekend. We were also together on a panel talking about the rise of podcasts as an alternative media source within the music industry. We spoke a little bit about that. And of course, if you've checked out any of our episodes in the past, you'll know that when we get to talking, basically no stone is left unturned. So expect the unexpected. Most likely expect a bit of spice. It's going to be coming your way very shortly. And when it's done, don't go anywhere, because I was also joined by Laetitia Abbenes of NorthStar Media and very good friend of the show, Katy Irizarry of Suspiria PR. Both of them have been working with the Inferno Festival for a period of time. And they had an insider's and an industry perspective to share with me about how the weekend had gone. A great way to cap off a fantastic weekend. So that is going to be coming your way imminently. But before we get to that, it's time to set the mood properly. So send the posers running from the room. This is Norway. Djevelens Sugar by Northjevel off their most recent album, Gnavol. I am pretty sure I have absolutely sullied the Norwegian language with my pronunciation, but that doesn't matter because the song is fucking brilliant, and you should head over to Bandcamp right now and pick it up, and of course, let them know that it was old Jackson who sent you if you do. A big thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the podcast. Thank you if you are following me on the socials. Thank you if you've headed over to the Teespring store and bought yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie. Make sure you follow my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. I've already mentioned Shayan and Iblis Manifestations, but of course we've got on a Monday Brandon Legion bringing you another installment of Horrible 666. I am your host every Tuesday with Into the Necrosphere, casting hexes and sending posers running for cover. Every Wednesday, Sensei Mike Hill of the band Tombs brings you another installment of Everything Went Black. He returns every Thursday with my favorite podcast of the week alongside his co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid. The podcast is Necromaniacs, and they review old and new horror movies, a perfect way to get yourself set up for something to watch other than pornography over the weekend. Every Thursday and Sunday, the sinister minister Carl Hikara brings you a journey into the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast Soul Knox. I'm actually going to be a guest on an upcoming episode of Soul Knox, something a little special that we're doing to coincide with the release of the new My Dying Bride album, so look out for that. And like I said, follow my fellow content creators as we wage war against mediocrity. My friends, the usual format of the show is going to be put on hold temporarily this week, partly because I've only actually got back home a couple of hours ago. So as I'm recording this, I'm a little bleary-eyed and I'm not quite sure I've got the stamina to record a whole news rant, but all of that will be back again next week. I will also share later on in the podcast who I got to meet at Inferno and who you can expect to see on a future episode of Into the Necrosphere. But while you mull over, while you bristle with excitement over that, sit back and enjoy as I welcome to the podcast for, I think right now it may well be a record-setting 5th or 6th time, my good friend, my brother, Shayan of the band Trivax. So like we were saying just before I hit record, this is both of our first ever Infernos. So I kind of thought it'd be a nice way, or a nice thing to do to start by recapping both of our experiences, you know, pros, the cons. I must say from my perspective, there's if we start with the negatives, there's very little.
I was going to say, there's not been much cons at all. I think it's been such a cool fucking weekend. It's so well organized here, and you know, I get that there were maybe like a few last minute things and whatnot, but as far as the shows themselves are concerned, the conference, you know,
Yeah.
it's definitely been I would say it's been a highlight, actually.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I'd say literally the only negative for me is the fact that they crank the fucking heating up inside the buildings of everywhere in Norway. I think that's not an Inferno thing, that's a Norway thing. But you know what I mean. I mean, you're probably
Sure.
potentially less prone to heat than I am, but for me, like every shop you go into, every restaurant.
Are you making assumptions because I come from a supposedly warm country?
I come from a warm country. I'm making assumptions because you're a buck and a half lighter than what I am. So it's
it's because in the venue. So obviously for people who haven't seen the layout in Rockefeller, it's you know, the venue goes quite high up. You know, you've got like multiple different stories, but you know, when you've got bands doing pyro and shit, especially. All of that, you know, obviously heat rises, you know, so it goes and sticks to the top. That's why when you come to downstairs, it's actually cooler.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point, actually.
Yeah. So I think that's part of what's happening there as well.
Yeah, when we were downstairs for Dimmu Borgir last night, it was much cooler than when we were in John D for cold.
Right.
That's a fair point. But yeah, I mean that's really the only thing that I would say is negative. It's fucking hot inside the venue. That's it.
I mean, it is called Inferno Festival, so
exactly.
You can't be missing the point.
It's experiential, the heat. I mean, I would say as well. So if we start with the positives, just of the actual festival and the conference itself. I mean, first of all, it's run to a fucking turn.
Yeah.
I mean, I have never seen something so well organized. And again, my experience is primarily limited to the UK. But you've been on both sides, actually three sides, because you've been a stage technician, you've been in a band, you've been, you've been an audience member.
I've also been a promoter as well.
Promoter, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So four dimensionals, how you do it. But I mean, for me, most shows in the UK start late, at least half an hour to 45 minutes late. On this weekend, there was not a single band that went on beyond or past 5 minutes of when they were supposed to go on.
Not even by like 2 minutes.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like when I say like clockwork, I mean like fucking clockwork.
The thing is, what they've done that's really smart is, and I like it when festivals do this for a multitude of reasons, is that, so they've got the sort of the two main stages. There's like a couple of other ones as well that only do like one or two bands. But for those two main stages, what they're doing is that when a band finishes, another one starts at the other venue. So what this helps you with is the fact that you end up with like hour-long gaps between each set.
Yeah.
When you have that, you have plenty of time to figure out your shit and basically do the setup that you want to have, and like if there's any room for errors. Because I'm someone as well as a musician. I have talked to I forget who it was I talked to this about, but I've got really bad anxiety when it comes to changeovers at shows. That's why sometimes if we get the opening slot, I actually don't mind it too much, because we get to sound check and then we get to leave everything on and then jump back on. But having like a 15-20 minute changeover is like the bane of my existence. I fucking hate it, because there's so many different things you have to set up, and with us, we're quite independent as a band, so you have to set up all the stage props, which we've got quite a few things like that, all of the mics have to be adjusted, with the skulls and things that we've got. There's different things that we have to place on stage. There's the guitars, for me, guitarist and vocals. There's a lot that goes into it, and we always pull it off, but it's just like, it's the feeling of dread that comes with it for me. Like, I absolutely hate that part, and yeah, when you've got that hour-long gap, it just makes everything so much smoother.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like, with the time that I think they're giving bands here, it would be, that.
And maybe just to clarify for, if you're in the audience, it doesn't feel like an hour because you have multiple bands you can go and watch at any given time. So
well, yeah, exactly.
They stagger them very cleverly so that you can go to John D, which is literally right next door. It's not like Incineration in the UK where, it's a 5 to 10 minute walk from venue to venue. Yeah, the club is, John D is adjacent to the Rockefeller Center. So while they were busy getting ready for Dimmu Borgir last night, for example, I went to go watch Cold. You watch maybe three quarters of the set.
It sounded great, by the way.
Cold.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to the highlight bands in a second. But the other thing that I'll say, just from a logistical perspective, is the sound was fucking impeccable. I didn't hear a single band that sounded bad. Like, Norgevel, for example, was, that's verging on high fidelity how they sounded. It feels to me, and I've not seen the venue in the cold light of day, but it feels to me like there's probably more acoustic insulation, more actual work going into how to make the venue sound good, versus in the UK, it's kind of like, all right, there's a fucking hole with a door. Just shove whatever you can in there. Who gives a fuck about the echo and the acoustics? Just a lot of bands just end up sounding fucking dreadful in the UK. The Underworld is a great example. The Underworld, I've heard maybe 10 bands in my life sound phenomenal. And it's, I know out of those bands, it was five of them had the exact same sound guy. Who I can't remember his name. I do recall he did the sound for Death Angel. When I saw them as an example, and whenever anybody spoke about him, they were like, they spoke about him like he's the fucking second coming of the Messiah.
The thing with the Underworld is that, it's such a legendary venue, and I like it a lot because I've spent I've spent a lot of time working there, when I've been working either as a stage manager or I've performed shows there, I've attended gigs there. It's just, I don't know whose fucking idea it was to put the stage in the corner, It's just like, and that really fucks
like
with the sound.
A step in the corner.
Yeah. Because it's kind of, it's a very, very weird layout, and it's kind of cool and it's kind of quirky, but if you were to take that and put it on the side, so the amps are actually facing the crowd properly rather than that corner, it would just be a little bit better, but it's one of them things. Different quirks, different things, to me, I try not to get overcarried with that side of things ultimately and just enjoy the fucking show.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been at shows where the sound isn't great, but I still enjoy the show. But there's that audio nerd in me, mate. It always comes out, and it's also because when you've experienced something that sounds fucking pristine, you're like, man, why can't they all sound like this? Because for me, it makes me enjoy the show much more. But okay, if we talk about highlight bands, so day one highlight for you?
Day one. What date was day one?
Thursday.
It all rolls into one.
Well, if I'd say you're going to say listening to Trivax in the hotel room.
Unfortunately, I'm not that self-indulgent, but I think that it was cool seeing Keep of Gillespie. Yeah, they were really tight. Did you see them?
I did not, no.
They were, I know they're a bit hit and miss for some people, but I thought they sounded very good, because it's difficult finding hooks, especially during a live performance, finding hooks and doing group vocals that are kind of melodic on top of blast beats. It's a very interesting thing, and it did feel very sort of, I think epic is probably the best word to describe it as, so that was fun seeing, and also they were a band I listened to a lot back home as a teenager, That's kind of what I always reflect back to, is bands that I listened to in Iran when I was, when I was discovering all this
which is a natural thing. The album by Keep of Gillespie that I listened to a lot when it came out was Armada. I think it was called Armada.
I know the one.
There was never really anything else that I was usually into. That was the album that did it for me. And then later on, they kind of softened their sound a little bit, and they weren't not quite my tempo. But,
I mean, it's one of them things, I fucked around with them a little bit in a funny way back in, I think 2012 or 13, whenever it was. They were doing like a cover contest thing.
What my cat used to do, which is fly comes by his face and you just
Yeah.
And then the fly is gone.
It's like one of our podcasts we were doing. We're having a really deep conversation. You kept getting attacked by a fucking fly on the other side. Remember?
Oh yeah. But dude, that's farm life.
Yeah.
I've now got myself the most perfect thing for this. I've got it's a salt blaster. So it's like you load table salt into the top. It's like a fucking a shotgun. So no more flies. People are going to hear some pops when I do summer interviews. That'll be from me assaulting the wildlife, but assaulting the wildlife. But yeah, so okay, day one. Yeah. Sorry, actually, getting back to Keep of Gillespie.
Yeah, no, it's just stupid because for the album, I think, was it Epistemology? I forget when it came out. I'm guessing it was around 10 years ago. Yeah, they did this cover contest thing, where he's very creative. He always does different things, where for a while they even tried this card thing, where you could pay for normal stuff, but then the band would somehow get royalties for it. They're always brainstorming on these different ideas, which I would really like to speak to him about. But one thing that they did was that here's the title of the album, here's what we're going to be doing. Everyone send in your covers, and then based on what the cover that we like the most or people like the most, we'll go with that, which is very fucking clever. I think that's really interesting. I know I would never do something like that as an artist personally, but I think from maybe business perspective, social engagement perspective, PR perspective,
from an engagement perspective, it's fantastic.
Really, it's very clever. I at least appreciate it in that sense. But I actually made one of the album covers, and I made mine on paint, and it was just a blank white background, and it was this very badly drawn guy with huge testicles doing a middle finger. and it said epistemology at the end. And quite a few people liked my cover.
There was a pencil sketch with an arrow pointing to it.
Yeah.
Cheyenne.
Yeah.
Cheyenne of Trivax.
Yeah, I liked it, but I wasn't doing it in a derogatory way. But I'll try and find that for you, And I wrote the band logo in like a really shitty, like hand-drawn way with the mouse on just keep of Kalessin. And then it was just this dude stand there with like his, like frowning like that and just giving a middle finger with huge testicles and cock. So, yeah.
Oh
I think a few people had fun when I posted that.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's like maybe the least fitting band for that kind of album cover. If they had like the next Pantera album cover, you could maybe go, okay, that's gonna suit them. But so I'd say day one for me, Norgevel, definitely the highlight. My only complaint, I said this to you when we were seeing them, in my opinion. Frontman never turns his back on the audience. It's just a rule of thumb. Anyone listening, hear me well. I fucking hate it when frontmen do that because you're breaking, in my opinion, you're breaking the connection with the audience. General never turns his back on the troops. Frontman never turns his back on the audience. You're there to command the audience.
I think if you do it, there is a right way to do it because Gall does that a lot. But I think that. I do also know where you're coming from, because it's a thing where you need to be projecting into the audience. So even when you do turn your back, you almost want their eyes to follow you. I mean, King Diamond, one of the coolest fucking things that I ever saw. Just the vibe of the whole show was when he would kind of turn his back and then start going up the stairs whilst he's doing the vocals, and then he's got this obviously pretty cool coat, so his shoulders are quite high up with the jacket and just and kind of like going up. It has like, and when you watch that from behind, it's kind of like, it feels like you're being led into something.
Yeah, so I can grant reprieve to that. That's a calculated thing to do. But when it's every single song as standard, just because you simply don't want to speak to the audience, which is what it came across as there, it kind of detracts from it. Like I thought,
agreed.
Like you guys are a hair away from performing a perfect black metal set. You just need to be more, just engage more with the crowd.
But you know what? That's also my issue when you say perfect black metal set. My issue with those bands, with all due respect to them, they're phenomenal musicians. They've all been around for a long time. I think Dominator is like one of the top tier drummers of this genre easily. Something about those bands just never clicks with me, and I feel like it's because there's a degree of syntheticness to it. It's almost like if you say to ChatGPT, create me the most modern, appropriate black metal sound, and I think it would come up with something like that. And it doesn't, like when I'm listening,
Firstly,
they sound great.
In Oslo of all places. No, I'm teasing, but no, you're right. You have a point.
It's for my personal taste entirely. Because I am like, when it comes to extreme metal, I like old school shit, I am drawn towards the Volcanoes, the Niflheims, the Sarcophagos, and so on, But for me, it just feels like it's tailor-made. It's like, let's make this thing, And it's like, it sounds great when you listen to it live. I mean, vocals sound really good. Drums are great. Guitars are great. Tone is great. Songwriting, there's dynamics, but then it feels like something in the middle that's missing right there for me.
I think you're not alone in that feeling. We all know a lot of people that are like that are, that feel very wedded to the early stuff because of the spirit of the early stuff. I think the authenticity of the early stuff. I think
it's the spontaneity that's missing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I would also say, just as a final comment, about the stage performance, stage presence. We spoke about this over lunch yesterday, but it's, you and I were both raised on the concept of the front man. the frontman as in drunk James Hetfield. Not new James Hetfield, must be 90s drunk James Hetfield. Phil Anselmo, like just big, Tom Araya, big personalities, like almost bordering on pro wrestling personalities. People that are constantly shouting at the crowd, constantly engaging the audience. And I love that. I love that, and I miss it if it's not at a show. I love seeing it.
Because I think a frontman sort of defines and gives meaning to what everyone else in the band is doing.
Yeah.
Because you can stand there and play all these cool riffs on a guitar, but it's almost like you need a frontman there to translate that. Because not everyone understands it. When you watch a show live, and I know this is disheartening for a lot of extreme metal musicians, but the main things that you hear are the drums and vocals. The guitars, you might be doing all these cool chords and shit, but it's not very easy to pick up on that. Especially if you're someone watching the show who's not a regular musician. And I think that what you need in that situation is someone who's animated and conveys what that message is all about. And that's why you need a frontman who has personality, and you need a frontman who engages with the crowd in the right way, of course. And, and it's sort of almost like the conductor at a symphony. You don't understand when the violinist is going like that, but you understand when the conductor's doing that. And I think that that's something that's missing from a lot of bands. There are certainly some bands that are terrific at it, this is weird, I'm sure maybe some people might disagree with this, but when we were watching Me and the Man yesterday, I was watching that and I was like, God damn it, he's really fucking good at that. He's really fucking good at bringing everything together and conveying a message, and mixing just the right level of humor, humbleness, rock star to engage with the crowd. It was educational, actually, seeing that show. Because I guess I watch gigs differently now. I don't watch it just to be impressed. I watch it to learn,
which is understandable.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's the same as why we do these podcasts. I'm always learning, I'm always picking up on stuff. It's the reason why I watch stand-up comedy a lot. I used to fucking hate it, but I watch it a lot now because I'm learning. When I watch pro wrestling, I skip the matches. I only watch the promos, okay? Because I want to see what they've got to say. How is one person stood in the middle of a ring, surrounded by 12,000 people, going to command the entire arena just using their voice and what they say? And that's the thing that I'm interested by. And I have to give kudos to Nurgle. He's very experienced. But I did wonder, do you get lessons for that? Do you have, in Poland, do you have conversations where you're like, no, I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but it's like, do you speak to comics? Do you do this? Do you do that? I'm very, very interested because I like to consider myself as someone who's.
I would argue probably based on what I can see and people I've spoken to about it, I'd say they probably adopt the best frontmen probably adopt a similar mindset to what you've adopted, which is a high degree of self-awareness, intellectual curiosity, and an appetite and an agility to learn new things.
Perfectly put.
An appetite for and an agility to learn new things, I would say, because
Absolutely.
and I think it's true of music to a lesser degree as well, but I'd say especially frontmen. You can see a salty dog who's been around for 20 years, 25 years, and the band will have reached mid-tier, mid-card status, if we're going to use we'll continue with the wrestling analogies.
They're a jobber.
Yeah, they're jobbers. They're always going to be in the support slot. There's going to be the select few people that want to show how deep their knowledge and how deep their love of the genre goes, and they're always going to really love those bands. But those bands are not ever going to really get anywhere. And in my view, or my experience, the first thing you can see when it comes to why that band never got bigger, frontman. The quality of the frontman will very significantly determine, in my opinion, how far that band's going to go.
There's one thing that I will say is that, I was just saying, do you get classes and things for that? Obviously, even if you did, that would be a very small part of it. I think that as a frontman, or I guess as any musician, I believe that you have a responsibility to live an interesting life and to consistently work on yourself and to consistently work on your own confidence. I think, and I'm sorry if this hurts someone's feelings, but I think if you don't have the confidence to, let's say, go up to a girl who you think is attractive and make a polite conversation with them and then see if you can take it further. I think if you don't have the confidence to do that, you have no room or reason to be on a stage fronting a band. I think that you need to be confident. You need to be confident, that you need to have the balls to approach life in a way that you're gonna get what you want, and or at least you're gonna work your ass off for it. It's not just like taking and taking. No, you're ready to. You've got the mixture of confidence and the willingness to get what you want out of it, and the willingness to dream big. And in a band, if you don't have that, at least as a front man, you're not gonna make it.
Well, also, this has always been a topic that's really fascinated me. So it's good we're talking about it now. I think a big part of the puzzle is having the self-confidence to be comfortable with your personality and know how to dial your personality up to 12.
Yeah.
Whenever they're asked to, staying on wrestling, whenever they're asked Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was Steve Austin, he's like, Steve Austin is me with the volume turned up to 11.
Yes.
The Rock.
I've heard him say
said
that.
Exactly the same thing. And I would argue, again, if we go down the list of great frontmen that we mentioned earlier, Phil Anselmo, James Hetfield, Tom Araya, very, very different in their styles. James and Phil maybe not so much, but certainly Tom's very different. And they're successful because people, they gravitate towards the authenticity that they're seeing, but at the same time, there is a showiness to it as well. But it's a showiness that always feels sincere. It never feels fake. And again, people can smell fake. You will see bands, your fans turn on bands very, very quickly if they feel like what's going on stage is fake. I mean, no disrespect to her, but a good example for me was Angela Gosso when she was with Arch Enemy. Reasonable vocalist and a lovely human being, but I remember seeing her on stage and I was like, none of this is convincing me. None of it whatsoever. Like, she just it doesn't seem like she's being herself, which is why, and we'll touch on some of the conference stuff in a second.
Yeah.
Something that Annette from Adam Mortem said that I thought was really cool from a female musician perspective. I love that she said she's always been very comfortable leaning into her femininity, because that brings with it authenticity.
I like that.
I think one of the, just as a side comment, I think one of the challenges that women have, generally speaking, I think they feel a degree of pressure to compete with men, and so they project very masculine traits on stage, which is just never going to be convincing. You're far better off, and I'm not saying, go on there with, 50 pounds of makeup, and a pair of clear heels. It's not quite that kind of stage show, but you know what I mean. Lean into your femininity, lean into your personality. If I went on stage and I started speaking with an American accent and using phrases that people who knew me didn't have never heard me say before, crowd's going to sniff that out immediately, whether they know me or not. People just have a radar for people that are inauthentic.
Yeah, I think so. But it's a difficult one, I can't pretend to understand what it's like to be female playing metal music. 'Cause it is, it's a very Dionysian form of art to begin with. It's very phallic, and it's very, you're trying not to laugh, I can see it.
No, you know what I thought? The first thing I think about is Blackie Lawless yelling, "I fuck like a beast."
But there you go. There is this like degree of, because I think when we are playing shows, we're kind of projecting the same side of our psyche that we would be if we were going to war to take and pillage and conquer. To me, there's no doubt to me that when at least Trivax is going on stage, we are activating that ancient DNA of we're gonna fucking come here and conquer everything now. And I think that's something that's inherently within metal, that's why there's like a lot of egos and stuff, and that's why it can be a toxic scene sometimes because there's no real conflict, because we don't go on stage and we're not involved in actual physical violence, it's only instruments. People get sensitive, people don't get humbled enough, I think, where, you only kind of, everyone's always like, butthurt about, where their band logo is on the poster and shit like that, And what I'm trying to say by this is simply the fact that it's, when in the ancient times you wanted to conquer a land, or if you wanted to defend a land, you always send in men. And obviously there has been times in history where women have been involved, there have been women throughout history far more fierce than I'll ever be. I'll put my hand up to that, no problem. But generally speaking, it is a male-driven thing, and there's a reason for that. And I think that when it comes to metal, we're projecting that same ancient DNA, at least when it's done right. It's the reptilian part of the brain, or, that same feeling of, you always hear Navy SEALs talking about how that time of their life, whether they went to like Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever, that was the best time in their life, even though their lives were constantly in danger, because they had that kinship, that camaraderie, and that mission to fulfill,
The veterans from the First World War did that as well. So If you watch They Will Never Grow Old, they talk about that too. I mean, guys that were in the trenches for months, that said, when I went home, I missed my friends.
Yeah.
So, but I just again about leaning into stuff. They're not metal, but a great example for me of a all-girl band, pioneers in my view, that leaned into their femininity and did it extremely successfully and extremely believably. L7. If you want to go check out a track that was on an album called Bricks Are Heavy, the song is called Diet Pill. It's a nasty, fucking menacing sounding song, but it's about a woman who's been physically abused by husband, lover, whatever the case may be, and she's basically singing a song from the perspective of lying next to this guy in bed after she's just beaten him to death with a frying pan, and she's loaded the kids in the car, and they're gonna basically go on the lam. But it's a fucking great song, and the brilliance of it is there's no trying to be masculine, there's no trying to emulate masculine tropes. It's just it's just raw emotion. Just being raw and emotional. I think that's why Chelsea Wolfe is so incredible. It's why I love Belinda from Johnny the Boy so much. And it's why I've always had a bit of an affinity for Madame Mortem. I've always thought that their music, even though that style of metal, that sort of gothic, doomy metal kind of thing, it's never really been my thing. But I've always thought they've always offered something pretty interesting, because I've always sensed something more believable about it than many other bands who we could name. But on the topic of great frontmen, so day 2 highlight, Ultimass. And how I know they were a highlight, so number one, I love the music. I thought they played incredibly well. David Vincent is a fucking phenomenal frontman, and he proved it by delivering the greatest quote of the entire weekend: "Weakness must be cancelled," which I thought was fucking brilliant. But what's interesting about seeing these bands with Paige is she's not from the metal scene whatsoever. Before she knew me, I think she'd probably heard 3 seconds of a metal song in her entire life. And when they were done, I turned to her and I said, "That's how you put on a fucking show." And she's like, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
Like, she got it. The girl who's not into heavy music at all. If you played her...
She's as non-metal as it gets.
100%.
I mean, she's lovely, of course.
Yeah.
It's interesting seeing the contrast of you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole different topic of conversation.
It is, but to your point, it does showcase how good it was. Yeah, I think he's a natural. Again, another person whose performance and what he does, I find educational. I do think that, with all due respect, he got very lucky by joining a band with Pete Sandoval and Trey at that age, at that time. But I do think that he also completely holds up his own as far as being a front man, as far as being a character in general. I mean, I appreciated this a lot when when I Am Morbid played UK just around a couple of years ago. I mean, for me, it was just cool seeing Pete Sandoval in the flesh doing those songs. I was like, fuck, this is great.
Putting aside his Bible for a few minutes and getting behind the drum.
Well, you know what? If it gets you through that, if it helps you survive, so you can still do that,
as they say in The Soprano, I salute. Do whatever you want.
Honestly, Jackie, I know this is very controversial, and I'm gonna get so much hate for this, but we live in a world where I have more respect. I cannot even fucking believe I'm saying this, right? This is weird even for me to admit.
This is going to be the lead into to this episode.
This is the coming soon. That's gonna get us blacklisted. Whatever. I don't care. I'm being authentic here. We live in a world where, at this moment in time, in 2024, I have more respect for a conservative Christian than an atheist, cynical person who doesn't believe in anything and has no morals.
I agree. I completely agree. I mean, I've touched on it on the podcast before. I went through my own journey, as did you. We came from very different religious backgrounds, but both brought up in probably, I don't know, I can't remember how strict your household was, but mine was very strict, very, very, very strict. And so
my actual household, I was very lucky because I have the most brilliant, open-minded parents, and I love them for that. My dad brews his own beer in Iran, and that's something that's illegal. You can go to jail and get lashed just for being in possession of alcohol. He still brews his own. He's always done it, And my mom's a metalhead. She likes Dimmu. She likes Nile. She likes Watain, Behemoth. That's her jam. And she likes Trivax as well, which is cool.
Of course.
I like that.
I mean, she must be so over the moon, delighted and proud of her son following Ella Burns Out. I mean, that to me, because again, I'm very close to my mom as well. That to me would be it zones out everything out. Everything else is kind of tuned out by comparison.
Yeah. I know the listeners right now are still mad what I said about the Christian thing. So this is maybe going over their heads, but
they've switched off. I agree with you. If you stand by the strength of your convictions and you're not a complete fucking scumbag, I don't really care what you do in your personal life.
Exactly, right? But first of all, that's really cool. They're fully supportive. They'll probably be watching this actually, but
hello.
But to your point, I mean, we were just coming back to Pete Sandoval and watching I Am Morbid live. One thing that David Vincent said at that gig, where I was like, fucking go on then, right? Is when he said something along the lines of, in his super American accent, obviously, he said, well, it's good to be finally back after we've been locked down by a bunch of fucking terrorists. And I was like, yes! My man, there you go.
Well, I think he and his wife probably could be pretty good mates with Tom Araya and his wife. So that's the impression I've taken.
And equivocally good mates of ours.
I was just about to say, which means I will probably get on very well with them. But yeah, Ultimass, highlight of day 2 for me. Anything from day 2 that stood out for you band-wise?
I think Ultimass were great.
Yeah.
Their name sounds like a Farsi word, which I keep, when my brother was there, it's Eltemos.
Oh, okay.
Which is like very similar, but Eltemos means, it's not necessarily like a negative word at all. It's a good word, but the direct translation is kind of like beg. It's not the right. It's not. It doesn't quite translate to the same thing, but we always say Eltemos Dua, which means that like let's say if you're going to Mecca, We say El Temasto, which means that we're requesting you to pray for us, kind of thing. Right. So that's why I kept going up to my brother and my Iranian friends at the show saying El Temasto, you know, when Ultimas were playing. So it was funny.
So
they put on a great show. Rune is, we've talked about it before. He's one of my favorite
one of the best
metal
of the
guitar
best.
players.
There's no doubt about it.
No
best
question.
Of the best. Okay, so then day 3, the highlights came thick and fast. I'll skim through very quickly. I saw Orbit Culture out of curiosity as much as anything else. Not necessarily quite my band, but I said to Paige, mark my words, in 2 years' time they'll be one of the biggest bands in metal. I've absolutely no doubt about it. I will stand by this prediction. You could just tell in the way the audience was responding to them. It's a mostly black metal crowd. Everybody was into it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're going to be huge.
Because we listened to I never saw the show. I'm guessing they had a good energy.
Yeah.
I listened to the songs before, and I was extremely overwhelmed. I didn't make it through the full song. I was like, this is not my thing.
No, again, that's why I say it's not necessarily my thing either. But I
might change my mind if I
could just tell.
Yeah.
They will be like Gojira level popular, I think, in 2 years' time.
Let's hope so. Yeah, good for them if that happens. Yeah. Great.
So then I went out and I watched, I caught a bit of In Twilight's Embrace, which literally was, I'm walking through the venue to go to the merch stand, and I'm like, stopping my tracks, like, that sounds fucking excellent.
Yeah.
I stopped and I watched,
they were awesome.
They basically watched most of their set, like, they were fucking fantastic.
They were really cool. I had Cyprian here for a chat. And he's actually one of the earlier guests of Iblis, like literally within the first 20 episodes he came on. And they're really good. I saw them when they played with Magua before in the UK. I saw them in Birmingham around like, I think June 2022-ish, roughly around that time. Great presence, great sound, great performance. When the blast beats sometimes kick off and then they really bring in that energy. I think they're a really good band. I think they're low-key very underrated, I think.
I agree. I didn't really know their music, so I dropped them a note while they were playing, and I said, listen, it's not often that I get, it's not often that I'm stopped dead in my tracks at a show by a band I've never heard before, but I just caught your set. I'm typing this as I watch you play. That was fucking fantastic. And
you have to consider they've also come a very long way. Their like first couple of albums, if you listen, it's basically like Dark Tranquility, In Flames kind of a vibe, like almost like metalcore-ish. And then as they've gotten on, they've become black metal and gotten a lot heavier, but then they got a lot of very interesting quirks. They released an album called Lava, and I don't know what's the correct Polish pronunciation, but in 2018, and then that's all like in Polish. That's a really interesting release, especially like the opening track. It's just this vocal line. I'm sure people who've listened to it, they know exactly the one I'm talking about, but it's this Polish line that keeps repeating, just like a spoken word, but then as it keeps repeating, the music starts piling on top of it, layer by layer. It's really fucking clever, man. Yeah, and Cyprian's a really nice guy too. The belt that he was wearing on stage was one that I gave him.
Oh, cool.
Actually,
well, I'll definitely try and get them on the show at some point.
You should. I'll introduce you guys.
Yeah. No, definitely. I watched Part of Sur. I watched Cold for about 6 or 7 songs. Decent show. Problem with Cold is they're enjoyable to listen to for 6 or 7 songs. Then you've heard the gimmick, and it's not really much more they have to offer you beyond that. It was fun, but it's not necessarily a band that I think. I'm not gonna if they play a show in London, I'm not gonna make the effort to travel down from the boondocks.
You don't make the effort for any band, so.
No, not really. I told you yesterday, mate, I'm a busy man. And then Dimmu
I'm pulling your leg, obviously, but I thought they were cool. They
were good. I had no issue with it. And like I said, just after a couple of songs, and I'm going to contrast them in a second to the headliner of last night and the highlight of the entire weekend musically.
Fuck yeah.
After a couple of songs, I was looking down at my phone. I'm like, how much longer is this going to go on? And again, it's not to hate. I was enjoying it. I wasn't as enraptured by it as as I've been elsewhere. bringing us to Dimmu Borgir. Now, I've had, my views on Dimmu Borgir on this podcast. Some of them have not been positive, but holy shit, that was fucking incredible.
Honestly, I'm still buzzing from seeing that show.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get this often, and it was like, sometimes you go and watch a band because there's like nostalgia behind it, which there definitely was.
Yes, of course, yeah.
They're a band I grew up listening to way back in Iran, and despite my old school tendencies, I've always liked them because of, I don't love everything that they've done, but I do respect them a lot as artists, first and foremost, because they have been, like everyone says that, they got big because they sold out. No, they got big because they did things how they wanted to do.
Because they had ambition.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, there's this thing of, there's this really hilarious double standard when it comes to this subgenre, which I love deeply, of course. But sometimes there's this bit of a fucking communist mentality, where it's like you're all supposed to be equal, and
it's pulling you down in the boiling pot kind of thing.
Like it's like
you can't be the crab that gets out.
Yeah, so you sell out by playing something different to what everyone else is doing. Is that what you're saying here? So you sell out by not playing the same fucking bullshit minor chords that has already been done to death. And I think they. That's one of the reasons why they became successful. Now, people can say, I already had good friends of mine actually messaging me in response to Vortex joining me last night saying like, oh, it's gay. I was like, yeah, I was waiting for you to say that, and, but it's like,
dude,
I don't care.
I don't give a fuck who you are. So that
was an absolute masterclass they did last night.
So they started with just old songs. And I was, in my element. I was like, this is what a fucking set list.
Yeah.
And then they go, we're going to introduce some old members onto the stage to help us celebrate our 30th anniversary. They announced
Chudolf coming on.
So Mistis comes on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
because Chudolf's the main. I don't know if you know, but he's like their old drummer. He's the guy who played on. Shagrath did the drums, I think, for like the first 2. Maybe 3 albums. I forget who did the drums on Enthroned Darkness, but Chudolf was a very close part of the band in the 90s, and I think maybe even like prior to Nick Barker joining. And I think
Nick Barker joined for Puritanical Euphoric Misanthropia.
That's right. Yeah, so. But then I think maybe Chudolf came back for a little while. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter. I know they were always on good terms, but and then they bring out Mustis.
I'm about to say Mustis comes out.
And in the old usual paint and everything, same paint that he always had when he was with the band, and he somehow grown his hair back as well. Because last I saw him, it cut his hair, I was almost like, oh shit, And then Vortex comes out.
And then the great ICS Vortex comes out, and not only does he come out, they play my favorite Dimmu Borgir song of all time, The Insight and the Catharsis, and he did the final singing sequence better than it sounded on record.
Right.
I couldn't fucking believe it. It's like, it's not like he's been, out flapping in the wind and not practicing his vocals. He's got his thing with Borknagari. It's not like he's still with Octurus. So he's still an active musician.
Yeah, he's very active.
But Jesus Christ, that was one of the most fucking amazing things I've ever seen in my life. If I had to do like a stack ranking of my top 10 favorite live moments, it is an absolute contender. It was that good.
I would agree actually. Because the thing about it that was cool, and again, for me, very nostalgic, because this was hilarious, actually. It might be funny for you to hear this, maybe, I don't know. But I think those guys left the band in 2009, and I was still in Iran at that point. And I remember having a phone call with my friend, the vocalist from La Vision Jangal. That guy. Remember having a phone call with him and being absolutely gutted, like, these guys have like left the band kind of thing, because the news still got to us somehow, like with fucking VPN and dial-up and shit. We eventually got the news. And we were absolutely gutted. It's like, oh man, we'll never see them together. And then Dimmu were actually the very first band I saw live in outside of Iran, and I was totally taken aback. But it was always this thing of, you'll never get to see that. You'll never get to see that how it was. So to see that last night and actually watching Vortex walk out with the same stage gear, with the same BC Rich that he always has, it's like he never got rid of it. He kept it somehow up until that moment. It's like
playing the upright, thing.
Doing the thing, but then doing the same style of like windmilling, which he never does. You never see him do that with like Arcturus or Borknagar or any of those bands, because they're a lot more like kind of chilled out. But then to see him walk back in and go exactly like how it was, just like all the DVDs I used to watch, like all the bootleg shit I used to watch back home. That was pretty fucking special, man.
Yeah.
That was very, very cool to see.
Total goosebumps moment. Again, Paige was next to me. She didn't know what the fuck I was on about, but when they said the insight and the catharsis, I was like, oh my fuck.
Yeah, they went there. I will say, I kind of expected it, and I'll tell you why. It's because on the left side of the stage, or technically stage right, they had a additional mic stand and a microphone, and it was on like a boom stand, which means that someone with an instrument's going to be singing along, and other than Shagrath, no one else in Dimmu has ever done backing vocals, par Vortex. So when I saw that, I was kind of like, oh, okay then.
Yeah.
I kind of had a feeling, but it didn't make it any less impressive when they actually did the unveil and then came on and played it, I was joking with my friend Simon from Winterfilleth earlier, and we were having breakfast, and I was like, it's cool, but it's a little bit like, when the ex is back in the picture and there's still some feelings there kind of thing, because they did really good. They played really well.
Oh, they had a real chemistry on stage, and you could tell it straight away.
And I feel bad for the bass player, and I think Cyrus is his name, and everyone who got to go back again on stage after that.
Yes.
Yeah,
maybe with the
that's a tough situation
you would make the argument that they should have left that to the end. But I mean,
but out of respect, because at the end of the day, those are the other musicians. Sven should have probably been here when we were talking about all of this, but it's sort of like out of respect for those musicians, because they've given them all their time and dedication, and they've been touring for 14 years, 15 years at this point with that lineup. So, it's a little bit like Metallica, when they had Jason go up there, were they just going to tell Rob to fuck off?
I would have done that. I would have said, listen, Rob, you're a nice guy, but we've lost something without Jason. We realize it now. Yeah. Thank you for your services.
I think Rob is an underrated musician.
He's an underrated musician, but he gets
way too much shit for what it's worth.
He doesn't have the same vibe on stage as Jason.
No, but did you see them in 2019? This is like complete nerd talk now, but when we saw them in 2019...
When they played at Twickenham?
So not the Twickenham one, but the same tour in Manchester.
So I was at the Twickenham show.
You were. Did they do Anesthesia Pulling Teeth at that show?
I can't entirely remember.
Well, they did in Manchester, and it was raining heavily. If you go search Metallica, let's say Master of Puppets,
I remember seeing clips from that.
It was really fucking wet. That's what she said. And during the rain, when he was there at the front doing Anesthesia Pulling Teeth and doing Cliff's solo, and they kind of have like little clips of Cliff showing on the different sides of production, I was like, you know what? You just fully earned my respect, because he fucking nailed it. And not only that, it didn't feel fake, like he was just replicating something. It felt like Rob was really like adding something to it. And I thought that was for me, that was a powerful moment. And then since then, because up until that point, you always like, oh, it's the guy who does like the gorilla moves and shit, know. But then it's like, give him credit. He's like their longest standing bass player at this point, which is weird when you realize
that's crazy to think.
That is really fucking crazy to think.
Because he will always feel like the new guy to me.
Exactly, yeah. But he deserves his respect as a musician for sure.
My favorite thing that he's ever done is actually when they played in Germany. And he does that bass doodle and then he sings like a song local to the venue. And they did Balls to the Wall. I thought it was fucking awesome. I was hoping the whole band would join in. I saw a clip of them do one of those, and they all joined in and did Running with the Devil by Van Halen. It was fucking awesome. I was like,
that was in Mexico, I think.
Why have you guys not recorded this?
Yeah.
It would sound so fucking like it's a perfect cover song for you guys.
Exactly. That was in Mexico 2017. That's when they did a bunch of shows with Iggy Pop. I think they did like 4 gigs in Mexico. This was just after Hardwired came out. I know the one exactly that you were talking about. And yeah, it was very fucking cool. And Rob did his doodle thing, and he did a couple of Celtic Frost songs. Tom was not happy about it at all.
Why?
They did. It didn't sound great. It's not. I don't think it's. I think they did Procreation of the Wicked. I can't remember if they did maybe The Usurper as well for some of their Swiss shows. Yeah, Tom was not happy.
I would have encouraged Rob to pick up a burger and then like take a bite and then go, all right, let's get another Celtic Frost song going here.
I'm sure they wouldn't be like that, but
No.
I think it's because they're from such a similar era, they're from like the same years. Those bands, like they started at the same time, but there's
question for you. If Metallica are playing a show in Newport, Wales, and they go, we know Shayan from Trivax is here, and they play just fucking around the opening riff to Alpha Predator, what would your response be? I mean, that's a nut bust face.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Well, there you go. It's like I'm not a fan of people who take themselves so seriously that when the biggest band on the planet play your song, you take it as an insult because it wasn't done note perfect. Come on, man. Like firstly, even if you regard yourself as being equal to that band, like you still take it in the spirit in which it's profit. It's like, hey, they're paying a tribute to you. It's a playful tribute, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's still paying tribute to you.
So this is what I would say. If that was me, I would be, of course. I mean, I'm not in the same position. I would be very, very humbled, first of all. I do think that Alpha Predator is a lot of Metallica references. So for anyone who's not listened to it, listen to Alpha Predator next to Through the Never. And then you'll hear the that's where that's from.
Well, since we spoke,
it's a direct reference.
In case you weren't aware, you were in the you were definitely in Mike's top 10. You're in my top 10 as well of 2023.
And thank you both for that. You had some very kind words to say.
The point is, all of the Legion will have listened to it by now.
Okay, yeah, sure. I would hope so. If you haven't, you can of course check it out, and appreciate there being subtle references to Metallica in a black and death metal song. I think the way we did it was fairly classy, but that's just me.
I agree. I mean, I could hear, like I said, just on that album, I could hear references to the first Deicide album. I could hear references to Watain. I could hear references to Dissection. But like I said at the time, what I loved the most about the record, and we'll segue into Trivax in a second, but what I loved most about the record is I could hear much more clearly than anything else you've ever done. I could really, really hear your personality. It was such a personal album, and I think the fact that we're friends probably enhances the listening experience for me in that regard.
I'm glad to hear that, because that could go both ways.
It could go both ways if you didn't do it with so much class, but I could hear it. I could hear kind of the love for what you do, but like I said, I could hear it in a way that, it ingratiated itself to me. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But thank you. I was just having visions of you, going on stage like, heel when The Rock was a heel. Cut the music.
That's not how you play it.
Cut the damn music. Take the guitar.
I think that would have been a cool thing. But just to quickly give my thoughts and perspective on that as well.
On my hateful position about that.
So if that was me, I would be super honored. Of course, I would probably just melt into the fucking floor. Although I would also accept it. I'm always open to possibilities. I never limit my own self-perception. Equally, God, that sounds really fucking pretentious, doesn't it? It is. equally, you know, you heard guys, you know, like Christopher Schneider from the drummer from Rammstein, when Metallica did Engel, he went out and made a statement. Rammstein are like fucking huge as a band. You know, they're like about as big as it can get. You know, maybe not exactly Metallica size, but
very close.
Very close.
Yeah.
By today's standards, anyway.
Yeah.
And he went out and said, "Oh my God, we are so honored and humbled that one of the greatest bands, you know, doing this. Thank you for the homage, all this and that. Great." And then when Tom comes out and says that, you know, and obviously he picked some issue with the fact that Hetfield was like a hunter, you know, he's a big meat eater, all of that stuff. You know, there's multiple things that you can think there. A is the fact that they're from the same generation, like Hellhammer and Metallica are pretty much born at the same time, more or less. If not, maybe like months or maybe like a year apart, no more than that. And although they also grew up in very different environments with very different opportunities, you get different opportunities growing up in a village in Switzerland than you would in the Bay Area. There's also that. Again, it's not a justification, you know, it's not even a comparison really, but it's just perspective more than anything. And ultimately, it doesn't seem like the diplomatic thing to say, which I would agree, it's not very diplomatic, but also that's what makes him, but by him I mean Tom, the artist that he is.
I was going to say that.
Outspoken, he speaks his mind, he believes in what he believes in. That doesn't have to necessarily jive with what everyone else is thinking.
Yeah, 1,000%.
And I do respect that.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. And I've made this argument before on the podcast and, you know, outside of the podcast, is you can, with a genre of music, you can never assume that everybody that's in the genre, just because you like their music, is going to be somebody that you could be friends with, or that, you know, that you could call a bro. If you do that, you can fast run out of people to like. You know what I mean? It's like there is a degree of magic that happens between, you know, chaos and order, at least as you might define it in your own mind in the scene. And some people's personalities are just very extreme. They're just very out there, and, you know, as long as what that leads to is the creation of something excellent, which, you know, is no doubt between Crypticon and Celtic Frost. You know, Tom's legacy to me is just absolutely phenomenal.
You know what? I'll tell you this as well, and a lot of people might not fully be aware of this or may not have witnessed it. You know, and I mean what I'm about to say in the best way possible. Okay, but when you hear him speak in a lot of interviews, you know, he's always very humble, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a musician, I'm this and that, very grateful," and I think that's great. You know, it's great to show humility. But when you see him do his thing on stage, because we got to watch him do sound check in London a couple of years ago, you know, got kindly invited, and he's a fucking rock star. You know, he's got a big personality. Like you won't think it. And like I said, I mean this in the best way possible, but that's literally someone who was born to be a musician on stage and fucking own it. You know, and I think that's cool. You know, but you never see that come across in interviews and stuff until you see it in person. And he probably wouldn't even want to admit that. He probably wouldn't want to say, "Oh yeah, I am a rock star." He would never want that, I don't think, based on my understanding. But he's a rock star, and I think that's cool.
When you're on stage, it's sometimes it's that projection, right? Of, you know, whatever, not necessarily projection. It's like a catharsis. You know, whatever you want to kind of get rid of. You know, Attila is not Attila when you see him in person. Thank fuck. You know, I know. That's very true. I know Mortis is not a million miles away from Mortis. Mortis off stage is not a million miles away from Mortis on stage, save for the corpse paint. You know, he's an intense cat. But, you know, there is always, with all of these dudes, there's always like there's with some, at least with some of them, it's the performance is the catharsis.
Yeah.
So just a quick kind of ribbon around Inferno. So obviously we were part of the conference as well. I really enjoyed that. It was the first time I've ever sat on a panel like that. for work
was awesome.
or for the podcast. That was a lot of fun.
That was really cool. Katy did a fantastic job handling the whole thing.
Yes.
I think her management
She
of
should
it
have
was
been-
spot on.
My not so diplomatic observation is she should have been a host for many more of the panels, because she does it extremely well. She's extremely engaging, and she's extremely good at managing the conversation.
She had the perfect mix of listening, but also managing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think because we all knew that time was limited, we all played along. And consequently, in that 45 minutes, which I thought was going to be impossible for us to do what we do, we all, I think, got in everything we needed to get in. I thought it went perfectly, and there's like no way I imagine it, I wish I'd said that, or I wish I'd done that. There's no thoughts like that. I'm like, that was perfect.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then on a sentimental note, the other things that I really enjoyed, hanging out with my bro finally for
Absolutely,
an extended period of time. This is only the second time we're actually spending time together in person.
It don't feel like it.
Which is no, it doesn't actually. No. But it was, that was really fun. And then my man Swartolf, who came to pick us up at the airport.
Great guy. I enjoyed meeting him.
Yeah. What cool. A fucking total gangster. He's just one of the nicest guys I've met in all my time doing the show. Set up the 1349 interview, which folks will see at some point after this episode is aired.
I like what he said to me. When you were introducing us, he was like, "Oh, I know you from the TV." Oh. I was like, what?
Well, he's also, he's a fucking treasure trove of knowledge about the black metal scene because he's so intimately involved in it. So it's fun driving around with him in Oslo, and he can point you to certain things. It's like, oh, that roundabout, this dude was arrested, or if you sat on this spot in 1994 for an hour, you would see almost every single important person from every black metal band that was ever around. Probably not 1994, 92. But yeah, great guy. But that was the fun of it. I would certainly love to come again. I think anybody who's anybody, if you like black metal, I cannot recommend it enough. You must see some of these bands in Norway because there's just something special to it. Obviously, we got to go to Helvete and take the hardest photo ever taken in the infamous basement.
That seemed to break Instagram a little bit.
It did, yeah. There were a lot of requests for us to go back and do it in the nude, but I said no, sorry.
Oh, you should have checked with me first, man.
It won't fit in with our schedule. But I also, another prediction I made at dinner the other night with you guys, I said I'd say 3 years' time, you guys are going to play Inferno, if not before. And I think you guys are going to absolutely fucking rip it up. I could see, and I'm not saying this to placate you or because because you're my friend. I could envision it when I was standing in the audience, when I was watching NorthStar. I was like 2 to 3 years, you guys are going to be on the stage. You must be.
Yeah, me too. I could see that as well. Of course, that would be an honor, to be asked to play anywhere with Trivax. Every time we get an opportunity, of course, there's like the logistics and then there's all that side of it. That's okay, no problem. We always figure that out. But the part that's more important to me is just the sentiment of, wow, they're wanting to take a chance on us. They're wanting us to go there and showcase what we have to offer, which I would argue saying is that it's a very special thing that we do as well. We've worked very hard for what Trivax is capable of doing, and we're constantly working at it. We're constantly improving. I think that we're a band that even if you see us, let's say, in April, when you see us again in August, we're a better fucking band. That's what we've always been like.
Well, I've not seen you guys yet, so this year is the year I will change that.
Yes,
I promise.
Right on. I'll hold you up to that.
No, this is the year I will change it for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I'm sure we'll figure it out. But I would be absolutely honored to come here. I'm already more than fucking overwhelmed that they even asked us to come here just to talk, and that's
we're both from the same.
Great.
From the same background in the sense that we grew up romanticizing Oslo and romanticizing Norway. I did, at least.
For a good reason.
Yeah, for good reasons. Like, all of your favorite musicians are here, and you kind of thought of this as this magical place from whence metal is made.
And when you come here, you understand why.
Yeah.
Well,
this was going to be my point. Like, from the moment we left the airport, I was like, I can just get it. I get why this music came from this place. And it's interesting as well seeing the locals respond to their music. I mean, there's an extraordinary amount of pride in their musical heritage. We're in this really fancy hotel, and in the foyer yesterday morning, they were playing Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk. You're never going to get that in the UK. I mean, they could have fucking Black Sabbath playing next door.
We've got the most posh hotel ever here, and then you go in the elevator and there's fucking playing Bathory. I'm like, what?
That's the thing.
You never see the two in the same place. But
the UK, they could have Black Sabbath playing right next door. You'd be lucky if you hear Changes on the radio. You'd hear Spice Girls. You'd hear Girls Aloud. It's just the point of it is for people that. Just to clarify what I'm getting at is I love and respect the fact that there is so much celebration of Norwegian heritage and culture, which includes black metal. They see that as something that's very important to their culture. I mean, Dark Throne,
in a way,
Dale told me the other day, is in the it's in the National Library.
It is, yeah.
It's fucking
that's
incredible.
Right. In a way, that's only the right thing for them to do as well, because a country of 5-6 million people, that's nothing. No. And then you've got however many thousands of people flying here, using public transport, eating, drinking locally, especially at their currency rates here, which is fucking expensive. And then you've got a hotel like this, which probably, as amazing as it is, and I think this is literally one of the best hotels in Oslo, if not Norway. This never gets as busy as it does now, I bet.
No.
So I think that it's a win-win for all of them, and black metal is, after all, Norway's biggest export internationally. And it's only in their own best interest to preserve it, and I would go as far as saying they're doing an excellent job of it as well.
Well, equally, just again as a city, Oslo's food is top tier.
It's good.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Service is fucking fantastic. Everyone's really friendly. And another thing that I would say, Paige pointed this out, and I agree with her, one big benefit of the booze being, prohibitively expensive for most people are way better behaved at shows. Like when you go into the Rockefeller Center, there's this very steep slope that you have to walk up to get into the venue itself.
A very good friend of ours fell down that yesterday.
Oh, really?
From being slightly inebriated.
Oh, you'll have to tell me about that afterwards.
I won't name names. He's
probably
not feeling great about that, but that's funny.
What I said to Paige is, like, if you had that in the UK, it would be within the first hour slicked with beer and fucking puke and everything else. It's
a bit classless,
yeah. It's just I think just generally the audiences are just generally better behaved.
Yeah. But also equally, there's pros and cons to that. Like as a musician, when you go on stage, you just want to watch people murder each other. But that's my preference anyway. But
that there is a flip side to that, because I agree. I saw a couple of mosh pits. And they're the most polite mosh pits I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, they were like one hair away from that Gen Z mosh pit that they had on Twitter the other day. Did you see that?
No.
There's this video of these
the Gen
Zers like lying on their backs, kicking the air at a show. It is the most fucked up. I'll see if I can find it on my phone.
What the fuck?
I have to show you, because hold on now.
It's like a cockroach.
Dude,
when you kill them and they lie on their back.
It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Have you killed many cockroaches? Do you get them in South Africa?
Of course, mate.
Yeah. We get loads of them in Iran. And I remember going to the basement of where my late grandfather used to live, and seeing these cockroaches having sex. And what they do is that they go back to back. They like reverse into each other. So they're both like pointing away whilst they're fucking. So there's like zero eye contact. Be good for some people.
I can't find it now. I'll have to find it and send it to you. But basically, it's these brats that are, sat there in their fucking Parkway Drive t-shirts and stuff on their back, kicking up into the air. It's like, when I see that, I just go like, bring in the bulldozer. Bring in the first bring in the cement mixer, just pour that over them, and then just go over them with a bulldozer. That could be the end of it.
Right on.
Anyway, what are your so let's kind of wind it down with just talking about Trivax plans for the rest of 2024. Because you've spoken about new music. You're going to definitely play me some new music straight after we hit stop on this thing, because you haven't done it yet. What's happening?
What new music? I don't know what you're talking about.
That
I know no such thing.
That Ed Sheeran cover song that you said you were working on.
We don't work with gingers.
But yeah, so what's the plans?
Yeah. We've got quite a few shows coming up at the moment. We have a very busy next month. We're doing a show in Hanau, Germany on the 13th of April. That's going to be at the Odyssey Festival. For whatever reason, we're actually headlining it. And the festival, it's kind of like a one-off thing. We don't normally do stuff like this, but this was very close to home because the festival is actually run by a lady who's, I think she's Iranian-German.
Okay.
So she's half Iranian, half German. And she's, of course, very passionate about the movement that's actually happening over there right now by the people against the government. And the show's actually going to be a fundraiser for Iranians who got injured during the protests, which I think is cool. Like I said, we've never been a band who would do stuff like that. We've raised money for like venues and grassroots venues, so if a cause is something that sort of like speaks to us, then we totally stand by it. But they were very kind enough to invite us to play there. And I'm giving this one a little bit more time to talk about it because we've got loads of other dates, but this show in particular I think is quite special for that reason. And it's actually done by the same people who did that protest last year.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've actually got to connect with them since that all happened, and turns out they're a part of this team, and they've got sponsors and different organizations and stuff that are all working together towards this, so for us it seemed like a no-brainer. So that's our next show happening on the...
We should actually do a separate episode at some point because I'd love to talk more about the movement and I always mean to bring it up, and then we're like fucking hour and a half in, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what's great about Mayhem? Do you know what I mean? It's like we get sidetracked by so many things. I would like to have we'll dedicate time specifically to talking about that because I am very curious about
Absolutely, yeah, anytime. I think it's for me it's a learning process. Even though I grew up there, even though my family are from there, even though I interact with Iran pretty much on a day-to-day basis, and of course at this point as well, for better or worse, I'm somewhat of a figurehead for the scene in that country, at least musically speaking. Anyway, you can go beyond that if you want, but I'm learning every day myself when it comes to Iran, so there is that. But so we're very excited to be playing that show, and it's going to be special, and we're going to be playing for a long fucking time as well, and maybe we'll do some couple of things that people might not expect, it's going to be special. And then just to give you the full scope of our plans as well, after that one, we're going back to Germany a couple of weeks later to play Walpurgisnacht. We're playing with like 1914, Lucifer's Child, Vision Bleak, Thy Light from Brazil. Really cool fucking lineup there. And then straight after that, we're flying after that show to come to do a full UK tour with Diocletian from New Zealand. I think everyone knows that band, and we're all very excited just to see them, and let alone have them do a tour. I think it's going to be very cool. They're in Japan right now doing that really cool Nuclear War Now event with Beherit. Have you seen that show?
I haven't, no.
Oh man, this is, other than Inferno, that's like the best thing that's happening right now, but it's all the way in Japan, and, of course, Yosuke knows his shit, so I think he's done a tremendous job with that. But, Yeah, so we come back and do a full UK tour with Diocletian. We do, in order, Newcastle, Nottingham, Manchester, London, Bristol, Birmingham. And then we have some quiet time on the outside with Trivax. And then later on in the year, we're playing Frantic Fest in Italy. And that's going to be, we're playing on the same day as Darvaza and Marduk, which I think for us is like a perfect match. And I think we're going to feel right at home there.
What a fucking, I'm about to say, that's quite a combination.
Yeah, I would
You guys
say
also
so.
have, and it's not been announced, so I won't give it away, but you also have a possible tour with a band who themselves you could call Men's Men. Champions of Champions.
Actually, it is kind of public now, so if the bookers want to get in touch, they can do that. So what Trivax is going to also do a run of shows with Atlas in December. I think that was a long time coming, that one. But it is happening, and they can contact Parasite Gallows Bookings, which is Atlas's agent, you know, and they're great people, by the way. And then we'll see where the storm goes.
All right, well, brother, thanks very much.
My pleasure.
Glad we managed to do this.
And once again, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's been a good week.
I was about to say, what a way to spend to celebrate my birthday. It's definitely the most interesting birthday I've had in a fucking long time. So
yeah, man, absolutely, and it's been a pleasure to spend it with you, you know, and go to the shows and have all these talks. It's been a very insightful week for sure.
We should have had the camera on us when we were going for a walk yesterday.
yeah, right.
I think.
I don't know, man. Your channel probably would have been pulled off YouTube, but yeah.
I do think next time around we'll do something like that, like something more sort of audio visual specific. I'll just put it on YouTube.
Or just a fucking gym session. Holy fuck!
Yeah,
that was good.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. This motherfucker can bench. I like it. Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, we'll maybe record one of those gym sessions too.
We should. Fuck yeah.
So, all right. Thank you very much, brother.
Cool, man. My pleasure.
An absolute goosebumps moment from this past weekend's Inferno Festival. That was, of course, the studio version of The Insight and the Catharsis by Dimmu Borgir off their 1999 album Spiritual Black Dimensions. What an absolute mind-blowing experience to see Vortex on stage with a band. I believe for the first time in about 14 or 15 years, it might even be a little bit longer. He sounded sensational, as I said to Shayan, and really for everybody who witnessed that, you knew you were seeing something very, very special indeed. A couple of people that I want to thank before I move on to the next segment of the show. First of all, Shayan, my guest, I think we could probably have filled up at least a month's worth of content with the amount of shit that we talked, much to the chagrin of our significant others over the course of the weekend. We just got to do so much cool stuff together. It was great finally being able to hang out with him. I also want to say a big thank you to my good friend Swartolv of the band Nocturnal Breed. Swartolv met Paige and I at the airport, really made us feel so welcome, and was also responsible for helping us set up a conversation with Archaon of 1349. That one will be coming your way over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks. Others that I've got in the bank: Dale Patterson of Cult Never Dies, author of the absolutely extraordinary evolution of the cult. It is, in my opinion, the greatest book ever written about black metal. Really nicely put together as well. Very fun conversation with him. DG of Mystyrming was another guest that I managed to pin down and get an episode with. So it wasn't quite as fruitful, I think, from a interview perspective as I had initially hoped. My observation, having been there now, is a lot of the folks that are going to the festival, playing the festival, are, kind of also seeing a lot of their friends for the first time in a year or 2 years. So there's a social element to it as well, whereby, a lot of band members just, for good reasons, are not going to forego hanging out with their homies to sit down with me for an hour or an hour and a half. But I got a good 4 interviews from the festival, including the one you've just seen. I've got 2 very big guests in the pipeline because of people that I met. I'm not going to share any details around that just yet because you guys know my superstitious mind. So when they happen, I'll share on the podcast who they are with. But if they do happen, I think the Legion will be more than satisfied. Just to give again, if it wasn't patently obvious from the conversation that I just had with Shayan, it was, in my view, one of my favorite weekends of my entire life. I cannot more strongly recommend that you go to Inferno. It's an extraordinarily well-run festival in a fucking fantastic city. Just superb food, superb service, superb everything. The festival, run to a turn, run by fucking great people and people that genuinely it oozes from the pore of every fucking thing that you see at the festival. They really, really love what they do. And of course, a mammoth thank you to Katy Irizarry of Suspiria PR for helping make a poor little South African boy's dream come true by inviting me, having me on the panels. By the way, you will see if you're following the Inferno Conference socials, they're starting to put out some of the footage from those panels. I think there was something with me that just went on today, taken from the hate speech panel. So they will all be shared in due course, and I'll share them, as much as I can on the podcast as well. Speaking of Katy, up next, I am catching up with her and with Laetitia Abbenes of NorthStar Media right outside the Rockefeller Center where the Inferno Festival was held. Obviously, we're on a busy street right outside a festival, so there's a little bit of background noise. I have checked the video, though, and I think it came out rather well. You will get to decide for yourself whether that is indeed the case right now. All right, so we're at the end of my first trip to Oslo. How many has this been for the two of you?
Oh, I think this is my 6th Inferno, probably.
This is my 3rd Inferno, and as far as times in Norway, I don't know, like my 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the 3 Infernos you've done with 3 that you worked, or did you do one for reconnaissance? Because I know you did last year's.
I worked, I think this is my 2nd one that we've done the project. And so all the other times were me I did as press, but also as a visitor a couple of times.
Yeah.
And industry. So I've seen the whole thing from every side, actually.
Yeah, I did. The first time I came was in 2022. The big comeback after the pandemic, and that one I was a guest, and I actually was supposed to start with them in 2020, though, weirdly, and obviously, that never happened in 2020.
The terrorists locked us down.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. The globalist agenda was in full effect. And
by the way, are you aligned to our? To our thinking, yeah. Otherwise, I'll try and kind of pull the stick back on how spicy the conversation gets.
I have no idea. We'll just
fine.
do you, and we'll see.
we'll keep it spicy.
All right, fine. But yeah, so after the terrorist globalist agenda was vanquished, you then, because I think I spoke to you when you did your first one, and it was kind of like I was going to check it out, and then they were talking to you around that time about you potentially getting involved.
Well, it's interesting because they talked to me in 2019 at Beyond the Gates. It was weird. Like, I get to Beyond the Gates. I was invited to do the delegate program and everything. And then everyone kept saying, oh, Inferno's the reason you're here. I'm like, well, I thought Beyond the Gates was the reason I was here. And then it turns out that because of the work that I'd done with Tons of Rock, one of the people who was there, Claudia, was like, hey, you would be great at doing this for Inferno. Told Inferno about me, met with them there, and I was actually supposed to start in 2020. So in 2022, I went, like I said, as a guest, and I guess at the time they were just trying to get through that year because it was just so chaotic, just push through. And it wasn't actually until December that both of us had the meeting with them where they approached us, and that's when we were able to actually now do the project officially with them.
Yeah, for me it was, I went to the launch of this project in Berlin, which was in 2019 or 2020, I don't remember. And then a week later, the whole COVID shit happened. So yeah, nothing happened, of course, in those years. And then we went to Beyond the Gates indeed. And I was also just starting my freelance business back then. And I remember talking to a couple of the Inferno people, and I told them, like, if you ever want to do a similar event, because as they had in Berlin, but in the Netherlands, that I would love to help them out.
Yeah.
And then later they approached us about doing such an event, and then we got hired for the project.
And of course, the three of you, so Jessica, you, Laetitia, you guys all spread your wings and flew. I loved the fact that you were like, you guys were still thick as thieves this weekend. Like I was wondering, because Katy obviously shared with me, a lot of what had happened, and that you all kind of decided to do your own thing. I was wondering how relations would be, but as I said, it was awesome that the gang still remained united.
Yeah, I mean, Jessica, I also knew before even working at Season, so we go way back, and also, but we got really close in those 5 years or whatever as colleagues, and so I'm actually just really happy that we're now just good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same. And it's actually funny because a lot of the connections we made working at the record label, I still am very close with. There's a couple people that I worked with in the Philadelphia office, for example, I still talk to, very frequently and plan to visit when I go back to Philadelphia and hang out with. And even a lot of the artists we still have very close relationships with. So that's one thing, is that there was a lot of really cool, awesome, positive people working there, as far as like our coworkers and clients went. And I'm really thankful to be able to continue, still have these connections and have these friendships.
Which is very rare, right? Like everyone I've ever spoken to who works in the music industry says, like, if you get to the end of it and you can count your good friends that you made in the industry on one hand, you're a very lucky person. And again, it sounds like you guys sort of hit gold in a way, regardless of any other circumstances surrounding any changes you made. So, okay, let me ask you, as insiders working the festival, what's your take on how this year went?
I think it went great, actually. The lineup was very good, and yesterday, well, it was of course sold out. It was a very strong and diverse lineup. We had a lot of new delegates from everywhere around as well, so the conference part went amazing too. And there were some changes in how it's structured, the festival itself, and I also think that worked out pretty well. So I think it's overall a pretty successful year, actually.
Yeah.
I agree. And I mean, like I said, I really only have 2 other years to compare it to, but every year there's just new elements of things that they're doing to keep it exciting. This year, for example, one of the things they're doing is brand new is a band exchange program. I forget which band it was yesterday, I believe, that performed, or 2 days ago, that was actually exchanged through Summer Breeze. And I'm not entirely sure yet how the band exchange program works, but it's something I'm going to be having conversations about when I get back to the States to see if it's something we could actually do with Milwaukee Metal Fest.
They've got a band A on their bill, you see band B on another bill.
Yes.
And you go, hey, how about we swap liability? It's like, how about we swap contracts?
But then, it's one Norwegian band and one German band, so it's
gotcha.
Very support the local bands. Give them a chance to play Summer Breeze, which is, of course, also like an A-list festival.
Yeah.
And it's usually more like emerging bands, too. It's not going to be like Dimmu Borgir. These are going to be like new, young, emerging talents that they're doing the exchange program. So that was like one new thing, for example, that they added this year that didn't previously exist.
Cool. And bands of the show, if you had to choose 3 bands?
That I liked, you mean?
Yes. The performances that stole the show for you.
Okay, so definitely Dimmu Borgir. That was a really amazing show. I also like Mysterium just now.
Yeah.
Very good show. And then either Sayer or Orbit Culture. So I'll just pick 4 and be like, okay, sneak one extra in.
On my podcast.
Well, I mean, I have to admit, I did actually lose a day of the festival. So I was not here on day one. I know, shameful.
That's crazy.
I just had to do between the conference. As you know, we did 2 panels that day, which coming soon. All right. I recorded and filmed them, and one of them is very spicy.
We'll talk about that in a second.
We'll talk about that in a second, yeah. And then that day I just got bogged down with so many meetings, which were great. I mean, definitely got some good work and good connections out of this. And I was just so jet lagged, so I never even made it to the venue on the first day. So to be fair, my scope is limited. So I didn't see every band. But of the ones I did see, I actually have to say exactly what she said. Definitely in this order, Mr. Ming, who we just saw now, that was just blew me out of the water. Dimmu Borgir and Sayor for sure. Orbit Culture, I just want to say they put on a great show. Not my music.
I would agree they're not my music. I said to Paige when we were watching it, I said, I guarantee you in 2 years' time, this is going to be one of the biggest bands in metal. You can just tell. Yeah. Like they have that air about them. And I'd say my bands, Dimmu Borgir for sure. You know, I've not necessarily been the biggest Dimmu Borgir fan my whole life, but holy fuck, they were good last night. And again, a mark of how good they were. I think before she met me, the closest Paige would have come to metal was hearing the first 30 seconds of Nothing Else Matters. And even she was like afterwards, like, holy fuck, that's how you put on a show. Mm-hmm. So they were incredible. I thought that Mysterium, so when I did the part that'll precede this, when I run the episode with Shayan, we hadn't seen Mysterium yet. They were fucking incredible. And I said, I really like the Winterfell dudes. I consider them friends. But I said, it doesn't matter what band you are, I would be fucking, if I were backstage, I'd be petrified to have to follow that. And then I think I really, really liked In Twilight's Embrace. And I didn't know their music. We were walking through to the merch stand, and I stopped dead in my tracks. I was like, that sounds fucking fantastic. And I was like, stopped, and we ended up watching the whole set. It was really, really, really good. And I like Norway as well. Ultimatum I really like too. You know, David Vincent, quote of the show, "Weakness must be cancelled." I was like, as soon as he said that, I was like, yes. So okay, now let's that's a nice segue into our panel. So podcasting panel, fucking loved it, and I'm so appreciative that you invited me onto that. We got on really great with Pedro. You know, Shayan and I obviously really good mates in any case. So that was a fantastic. Just generally really enjoyed it, and I had so much good feedback off of that. People like reached out to me saying they want to be on the show. They really found it inspiring. I was like, make sure you check the episodes. You're probably going to change your mind as soon as you've seen the content. So, but that was great. And then we did the hate speech panel. So I felt for you a little bit in that when the knives came out, so to speak, it's very, very difficult when somebody's trying to press you for data points on certain things to jump in. And afterwards, I was like, fuck, man. Matt Taibbi, Jimmy Dore, Michael Schellenberger, and Glenn Greenwald all reported on that. And these are all award-winning journalists, except, you know, Jimmy Dore accepted. But I still think what I liked about it, I spoke to Harold today. I think generally speaking, in spite of the fact there were some pretty divergent views on that panel, there was still, I don't think there was no ill feeling. I mean, I think we all had a very civil discussion, and I felt very positive about it coming off. I'm curious to see what the footage looks like when you release it.
I'm curious too. I loved it. I mean, all the panels we did, and the podcast one, it was such a contrast. Podcast one was very light, very fun, and you could see people were having a good time because, again, I did this on purpose because podcasters are natural entertainers, right?
Yeah.
You know how to work an audience, you know how to publicly speak. So I knew it'd be great, and I think sometimes the panels sometimes lack that because some of these people aren't. And that was a lot of feedback I got of how fun it was and engaging, and people really learned a lot. And then obviously the other panel. So number one, the whole thing with data did kind of bother me because I felt like we did kind of discuss the night before about it made more sense to discuss lived experiences. I don't claim to be a specialist on anything. I just can relate to what I've experienced working in the music industry for half of my fucking life. Yeah. And it's just like gets a little muddy when you're put on the spot for stats and stuff. Like I could barely do math. I can't remember some of this and what have you.
Every single person would be that way. Like unless you are practiced in that, like you're like Douglas Murray or somebody who is used to being the firing line and can fire off those data points, like it's written, tattooed on the back of his hand. You just can't do it.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be able to do it either. I also would say, just on your point of lived experience, it's like the point that we made about Panzerfaust, which again, reference for people will see it when they see the episode. We know these fucking people. I know Brock. So, it's one thing to say a guy is, marching with Nazis, but it's like, okay, do you know him?
Well, exactly. And that was the whole point with Uwada. And that was also bothersome to me, where it's like they think that Uwada any band should not play a festival if there's a band that has an unfavorable opinion.
Yeah.
Whereas I personally don't believe that. I feel like it's okay to not have an opinion at all and to just want to do your job, play for your fans, regardless of the circumstance. And I think people need to learn the difference between, again, having a hateful opinion and supporting it versus not caring. And that's totally fine. Not everyone has to care about everything. But overall, I actually did feel positive about it, and I think it was interesting. So Harold, number one, I talked to him like 2 days ago after the panel, and he's like a brother for life now.
Oh, he told me this morning he's going to do his best to cancel you.
I know.
I pleaded with him not to, but he said I've made up my mind.
He's canceling me.
Bitch is going down. Which if you meet Harold will be on the podcast as well. I spoke to him about that today.
Yes. Oh, I was hoping you would talk to him on the podcast.
That is about the last words or whatever come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He's amazing. He was I felt like I actually wish he got to talk more because he was such an interesting person with such a I think out of everyone, he was the most even-keeled. You and I think are a little more passionate, and Marla was definitely very passionate.
Prone to being hot-tempered.
Yeah, we're a little hot-tempered. He was definitely more even-keeled. But even with Marla, it's interesting. You said something that really struck with me about how it doesn't matter. You could sit down with someone for a couple of minutes, in those 10 minutes, no matter how you think, your background, anything, you're going to find common ground. And that was immediately how I clocked Marla. While we are complete opposites as far as our opinions go, we're actually very identical as far as we are young women, we are young female business owners in the music industry, working specifically with extreme and heavy metal. And that, to me, already, she has my respect.
Yeah.
And I did say that at the end of the panel and I'm glad I did, because it turns out afterwards people thought we were going to get into fisticuffs. And I'm like, no, we're just passionate. We weren't mad.
I was going to lead in along the side and go, Jerry.
Well, Pedro thought that he was going to actually, he was like, oh, I see why you hired me to be your bouncer now. He was like, I thought I was going to actually have to protect you. And I'm like, come on, man, I'm from Staten Island. I got this. No, I'm kidding. But she was really cool, and I really respect her.
A lot of people get really they get really taken aback by passionate conversation. It's like, when you want to see me pissed off, you can see that, by doing certain things. Come and scratch my car, be horrible to the dog, say mean things about Paige, I'll get pissed off. But just because I'm getting excited about something, it just means I'm passionate about it.
Exactly. And you and I are just very animated people as well. And Marla is also a very animated person. So it just comes across maybe a little bit stronger than someone just having a very flat debate. And who wants to see that, right? You want to see people who really are strong in their convictions. Yeah. So I actually felt really good about the panel, and I actually felt bad that people thought that Marla and I were getting heated together, because we really weren't. We were just very passionate women, and you're a very passionate person. And I think that in general, just being from New York, I tend to get that where people think that I'm just being aggressive, and it's like, no, I just talk like this. It's not aggression at all. Yeah.
No, I agree. I did miss out on being able to give my quote, which is to say, I find every single word that comes from the mouth of Don Lemon to be an offense to my intelligence. And yet, if you want to watch his bullshit show, go ahead and do it.
Go for it. Exactly. And listen, everyone got mad when I shouted out Fox News. I'm sorry, but that's the only mainstream news anchor, Greg Gutfeld, who's a metalhead. He's on his show playing Motorhead and Girls School. I mean, he was the only mainstream Fox News.
I didn't see any of it. Sure.
Fox News.
Well, Greg Gutfeld is a fucking badass.
He was
I think he's a great guy.
only person to have Riley from Power Trip on national television and interview him.
And he was the only person on national television to actually give a eulogy a very touching eulogy when he passed away.
Exactly. And to me, that is real journalism, that you're not going to look at someone else's beliefs and you're going to give them a platform even though they think differently from you. I watched The Five on Fox, and what I love about that is they always have someone there who, on our panel, is a little bit more liberal to give that other perspective, because I think it's so important for everyone to see all perspectives. So That way you know we're the right ones. No, I'm kidding.
Especially if they concur with mine 100%.
You must always agree with me. Yeah. Again, it's not really reasonable. And who wants to live in a world where everyone agrees with everyone thinks the same? That's boring and culty.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. All right, well, I am looking forward to that footage coming out. I just want to say again from my side, thank you so much for making this weekend possible. I genuinely, I don't want it to sound like some fucking sob story, but when I was growing up and you're looking at Oslo as this fucking magical place where somehow you drink the water and the next thing you know you've got corpse paint on and metal is made. All the shit that I got to see and do, I got to shake hands with Attila.
I saw that picture today.
It's it's really like incredible. I was actually quite emotional after I shook hands with Attila because I said to her, like, the gravity of it struck me afterwards. It's like that is like, as in my mind, I mean, he's a good dude and I got on extremely well with him, but when you actually take a step back and go, what would the 14-year-old me have done if I told him, like, you're not only going to shake hands with him, you're going to have a show, there's going to be like a there's going to be enough of a connection there that you guys are keeping in touch. So yeah, it was fucking amazing, and what a great way to spend my birthday as well. So I said to her, we'll for certain be we'll definitely try and make it an annual pilgrimage.
Well, I am pretty certain that you will be invited back.
I hope so.
Yes, I from the feedback I've gotten how excited the owners were about you.
Scumbags.
Yeah. Well, Jan Martin, he was actually really happy to see some new faces and new representation. Yeah. And I also heard today that the grant board was really excited about the podcast panel and thought that in general was a very interesting and unique idea. But I did want to actually say, funny thing to kind of add on to what you just said about Attila is I kind of had a moment like that last night where I had a private small hotel party, which ended up not being very private or small after a while. Yeah. When Dimmu Borgir's manager, who's a very good friend of mine, comes in and goes, I hate to ask, because I got a big room, which was actually a mistake, but that's a whole nother story for another day. And she was like, Dimmu Borgir needs to find a room for, we call it Nachspiel, which is like the night after party in, Norway. And they're looking for a room. And I'm like, and in my, adult me presently, who's been at this festival for several days and is really fucking tired, wants to be like, well, I'm ready to kick everyone out. But then I think about 13-year-old me, listening to like Dimmu Borgir for the first time ever, and when Impact they made and wearing my Dimmu Borgir hoodie till it fell apart. How do I say no to that? Hell yeah, Dimmu Borgir could come party in my room, and I'm paying for it today, but it was worth it. It was a dream come true.
Which is why you're
why I look like this. I mean, I'm sure people are probably doing a double take right now, like, who the hell is that? I am not in glam. I'm in my hobo clothes because this is just, I woke up today and I'm just like, today's goal is to survive. Yeah. We are among the last survivors, by the way. A lot of people left.
I know.
But we stayed. We're holding it down.
Hit the road. Well, like I said, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. I'm so pleased I finally got to meet you in person.
Yeah, indeed.
And I will do my level best to make sure we're here again next year. She's survived one trip, and I'm speaking, of course, of Paige, who's behind the camera. So I'll be able to convince her to come again next week.
I would like Paige to come again because I did not get enough.
Next year.
Yeah, next week. Come again next week. Inferno's not happening next week, guys. Okay.
I'm sure
they don't do these weekly in Norway.
There in a week. No. Yeah. But in August. Oh no, July.
Oh, that's true. We're also working on trying to get you over to Beyond the Gates. So maybe round 2 in Bergen next time.
Maybe. Who knows? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Battle of all ages, embrace of fear in our enemy. Marching, marching, telling victims by and by. So say if Dr. Nixon Jesus and I. Infidels are clearly in our sights. We move with vigor as our gods are so demanding. All advancing, rid the earth of all this fucking blood. Marching, marching, with a victors for our time. We spread the gospel of the warriors divine. Grapes of wrath comes most over of wine. Sacred libations until the closing of time.
And that, folks, is a wrap. I just played a track by Ultimass, Exorcitus Era of the album Epic that was released on Season of Mist a couple of weeks ago. Another group of standout performers from the weekend. And, of course, my guests this week were also standout performers in their own rights. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed that episode. I will announce next week's guest basically once I've decided who it's going to be. I've got a fair bit of content floating around now, so we're not short of anything to post. I can tell you guys that much. I am debating whether I might do a couple of weeks where I do twice a week, but that's very much going to be dependent on how much time I actually have to do it. And equally, what I've discovered over the course of the last probably 6 to 12 months is that if I don't do a full fat episode, the Legion revolts. Can't have that. And equally, I don't want I don't want any episodes being treated as lesser episodes, lesser necrosphere. So I've probably just answered my own question. There'll be one episode a week, and I'll tell you who it's going to be in due course. I am also going to close off this episode with arguably the best band of the weekend. I was a little giddy with excitement when I spoke to both DG from this particular band, the band, of course, being Mysterium, and when I spoke to Katy and Laetitia about it. I mean, their performance was just on a fucking different level completely. Physicality in black metal is a rare thing, but these dudes came on and they absolutely ripped that stage and that audience a new one. And so therefore, it is only right that we close off with a song by them. I would like to say to all of you, the Legion, whatever it is that you're doing, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.